I'm Greg Byers.
And I'm Ernest Bisong, and this is the third masterclass in the series from the Twin Cities Jazz Festival.
So yeah, I started playing cello at the age of 2.5. My mom saw a Suzuki demonstration at the mall, and Suzuki is known for starting students very young. And she was considering starting me on cello, and the instructor said, well, actually, there are a lot of violinists in the world, so if your child wants a chance to be a professional musician, you might want to consider cello. And here we are.
I'm originally Nigerian, and so I picked up the violin at, I would say, the age of 8. And it's been an interesting journey because my instructor at the time, I was learning to play the clarinet, and that just wasn't going well. And she was like, you know what, you should try the violin. I'm like, I don't know. It's just not a cool instrument for the kind of things that I, want to do. And then, she spoke to my mom about it and tried to get everybody that I knew to convince me to try the violin. I hated it at first, but then, it turned out to, be my life source.
It was sort of a ubiquitous thing in my life, and I think as I got older, I started to realize that I loved music, but not necessarily doing the traditional things that a cellist would do in grade school. Playing in orchestra, playing in string ensemble. The things that I found more enjoyable were chamber music, where I could actually feel like there was real rapport, even if we weren't improvising. There's a little that, rapport. And then in high school, I had a friend that was a trombone player in the jazz band, and he brought his trombone part to me and said, here, check this out, dude. You should try this out. And my jazz band instructor was cool enough to be like, yeah, you want to join us? Go for it, And I think once I realized that there was this style of music out there that let me bring my own self and my own creativity to the table, right? Because like you were saying earlier, when I play a concerto, there's more or less one way that the concerto is supposed to be played. And I never thought I was the most virtuosic cellist or the most theoretically gifted, but I thought I might have the most heart and be able to emote the most. And to me, I needed to play a music that let me take advantage of that.
I mean, just thinking back to when I, first started learning the instrument, I don't think I knew exactly what I was doing, I'd say. But then my mom had all of the insights, and she just pretty much, I'm not sure you guys are I don't think you know what it's like to live in a Nigerian society. It's different from what you guys have here in the West, to where you have lessons paid for and you have parents, dropping you off for lessons and stuff like that. We didn't have things like that. So growing up, it was the churches that had the instruments, and so you had to go there to the space, the actual space, and use the instruments. And children normally have chores that are assigned to them, and so for me, growing up, I didn't do a lot of chores because my mom wanted me to practice and just spend that time with the instrument. And so I was gone a lot. I didn't really have a childhood because I was, practicing or just doing some musical endeavor. And my mom would do all the chores and, have warm food waiting for me and that kind of stuff. So, it was then that I started to really see that, there might be something here if my mom's encouraging me this much to, go with the music. And so, a couple years down the line after I started, I got, an offer I got to be paid, I got my first gig, I was paid to play the violin. I'm like, is this normal? Is this supposed to be happening? Am I supposed to be paid for just doing this thing that I love, that I've learned to love? And so, that's when I knew that, there might be something here with the violin.
So after I started cello at the age of 2.5, I was playing in orchestras in school, very classical music sort of stuff, but I was listening to alternative rock. That's what we had on the radio those days. And I always found it weird, that dichotomy between what I was hearing on the radio and what I was playing in orchestra. So my friends and I would just sort of get together and play like Red Hot Chili Peppers before orchestra rehearsal started. And that piqued a curiosity to play all sorts of non-classical styles. And I ended up attending University of Miami in Florida, and that was just an incredible melting pot of all these different cultural backgrounds and just these really cool styles of music that I got to really authentically study down there. And that sort of immersed me in the world of jazz and blues and hip-hop and R&B and salsa and samba.
So my musical journey pretty much started in Nigeria. And I took lessons from pretty much one of the foremost institutions in the country, the Musical Society of Nigeria, and I studied with some really world-renowned musicians, Louis Jones, Agnes Naji, and a couple other people. So I mean, I did all this stuff with classical music, and I just found, that, other things tickled my interest in addition to pretty much like, Greg said. And it was interesting because I started to just like explore. And then I stumbled on jazz. I'm like, what is this sound? I quite like this sound. And so, I just thought it was a lonely process for me in the beginning because not too many of the string players, that I, grew up playing with really dug the sound at the time. And so it was a lonely thing. And so I had to reach out to a couple other friends who were pretty established in the scene, as jazz musicians. And I pretty much just picked off of them and just learned different things. Many years down the line, I, came to McNally Smith, quite like Greg, just, to take things to the next step. That's how I met him, and we've just done so much stuff over the years.
I love that we're from completely different musical backgrounds, but once we start talking through our instruments, it clicks right away.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And for you, did you, I feel like I wanted to step beyond classical music because I knew there was more personalized music that I could make. And I saw in jazz a way to put my personality into the music. Did you find that?
Absolutely. Yeah. I quite felt with the whole classical, idiom, and there's really nothing wrong with it. It's just I felt like the composition in itself was the end. You had to stick with those parameters. But then jazz was a different story. Pretty much the composition pretty much opened up, several palettes for you to, explore and do things with the music. And so that's why I stuck with the style.
Totally. Me too.
Yeah.
That's definitely, I really appreciate. If I'm feeling really great one night and I want to play a melody super happy, I can do that. And if I'm down in the dumps another night and it just has a different attitude, then I can do that. Jazz allows for that,
Yep.
Mm-hmm.
I guess that's why we click so much, because of the heart.
Yeah. So I've lived in Miami, Florida, and Los Angeles, and I'm from Rochester, New York. So I've lived in larger cities, and that doesn't necessarily guarantee that you're going to find bowed string musicians that are thriving in non-classical music. And I think the cool thing about jazz is it's such a broad spectrum of music, but it also makes it challenging as a jazz musician. I am expected to be able to play a Latin style tune or Afro-Cuban or swing or hard bop, and all these styles have their nuances to them. And so I feel like a lot of times I may find a great fiddle player, but if I ask them to play fusion music, that's totally beyond their grasp. Or I may find a great rock violinist, but if I ask them to play some bebop, it's going to be totally over their head. And so what I love about playing with Ernest is that, like, I can pick all the crazy songs or play my own compositions, which sure aren't easy, and throw it at this guy, and he takes it all in stride, and it's great.
Yeah, no, it's definitely a blessing to be able to do this stuff with Greg, because for me, I'm really big on the language. Whatever instrument you play this music on, you have to have the language right. And so just, it's a gift to be able to do this with Greg, because he totally understands, you know, he captures that spirit, the essence of the music when he plays.
The instruments that we play, in the sense that there's a lot of bands have drums and guitars and keyboards and electronics, and I mean, we have electric thing, we both have electric instruments, and we like to rock out with that too, but I think there's something really powerful about getting just a diverse array of acoustic sounds and using all of them in these different styles, because there's all sorts of percussive things and stuff that maybe if I was playing with 50 other people, it would sound like cacophony, but in this setting, it's so intimate that I think we can really sort of like stretch what you think we are capable of on these instruments.
Yeah. I mean, one word, eclectic, because I mean, when we play music, we're usually not, you know, we don't start out knowing exactly how it will, you know, travel. It just goes, and we do things, and he does things. I'm like, okay, I see where you're going, and then we do things. So, I mean, just to say that it's jazz would be putting it in a box. I'd say it's music, it's a language, it's art. I'd say, you know, so I'd say eclectic.
And definitely very improvisation heavy, but also we both draw from all these different styles. So like Ernest is saying, he might throw something out there that we're so fluent in playing with each other, I'll just pick up on it right away. And maybe that means we, I don't know, whatever. Absolutely. The music just moves with it, however we're feeling. So I think one of the things that I look back and I didn't realize how much of this I needed was courage to step forward and try things out on my instrument that I wasn't necessarily hearing anybody else do. And I think nowadays there's more and more people stepping outside of the norms for a 400, 500-year-old instrument. And so I think that is really having an incredible snowball effect in terms of more bowed string students are seeing people like two cellos or the piano guys and saying, hey, like, there's more I can do on this instrument than just play some Bach, even though I love Bach, and that's beautiful. But I think it takes a lot of courage to show that side of yourself and try something out that's never been done before.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. And also, I think, you know, just especially with, you know, this music and like just learning this, it's pretty much like learning a whole new language, right? You have to be patient with yourself as you explore. I mean, there's like, you know, foundational things that you need to do to start to get into improvisation and jazz. But I feel like it's important to be patient with yourself, you know, as you are on this journey. Because first off, I mean, if you pick up a real book or something, a lot of the music, you know, some of the music doesn't actually even lay well on the instrument. And so just being patient with yourself as you know, explore and continue this journey. I know that I was patient with myself when I first started because I had to make sense of it all. I mean, modes and like, you know, all that stuff, major modes, minor modes.
It can feel very overwhelming as a beginning student if you are just dropped into the sea, the ocean of jazz.
Yeah, I agree totally. So yeah, just be patient with yourself and take it one step at a time.
And I think included in that patience is being patient when you make those mistakes or when you listen back to yourself and it's not at the level that you thought it might be. And I am definitely a very self-critical person of my own playing, and I've had to work on my patience with myself in terms of, like, I always have room to grow. I always have room to learn. And I just need to remember that if I put things in order and I work hard at this, I'm going to get the results I want. And that's a really cool feeling when you can achieve those results.
Absolutely. To even just come this far with, this music as we have, you definitely have to have passion for this. Because, there'll be moments where you'll be so beat down and you feel like it's not worth it. But just know that in that very moment is the strength that you need to keep forging ahead, because then just shortly after you'll see the reward of all the work that you've done. So keep that passion going.
Mm-hmm. I think for students that I work with, the thing that really gets them to just immerse themselves in a style of music is being passionate about it. And when I can help them find a piece of music or a style of music that they're excited about, I know that once we're done with our lesson, I don't have to worry about them practicing because we're working on something that they're just excited to go home and master. And so having that passion, having that drive to put in the time and say, like, I am going to figure out how to play this really difficult tune in the real book. I had to go through that, and it was pretty challenging at first, but I was so enamored with some of these jazz songs that I was hearing in high school, and it was such a different musical world from the classical realm. Yeah. I had that background of how to practice. I knew, okay, if I'm passionate about jazz, I'm going to take measurable steps, and it might take a while. It did take a while, but hey, it worked out pretty well.
Absolutely, yeah, sure. Yep, totally.
When I talk to students now, one of the things I tell them is nobody in high school told me that I could be a professional jazz, eclectic styles cellist, right? Nobody told me that I could be a freelance cellist. And I always wanted a nice, stable life, but I also knew that if I were to do that as a cellist, it would be not honoring the creativity that I was being inspired by when I was listening to jazz in high school and being inspired to move beyond some of the classical music that was sort of given to me. And so I think, for any prospective students, I think they should remember that a lot of their influences and a lot of the people that inspire them on their instruments probably had no clue what they were doing in the beginning. And it took a lot of trial and error, and it took a lot of courage to get back on the horse when it knocks you off. And I know I had to do that a lot.
And I think it's important, as we talk about, just improv and learning this music, to see the music through your own eyes as a student. Because, like Greg was saying, a lot of the people who were innovators with this music, Coltrane and Charlie Parker, they pretty much started where you are now, just trying to figure out, these sounds and what things you like and what things you don't like in the music. And so I think it's important, again, this just ties into all the points that we talked about with being patient with yourself, being courageous, I think it's important to see the music through your own eyes, all these different, cool jazz, for example, Miles, he was such a trailblazer that, people didn't even know what to do with him, because he just came up with it. He reinvented himself pretty much every couple of years, so and that's because he saw the music through his own eyes and on his own terms. So I think it's important that we all do this for ourselves.
students shouldn't be afraid to not immediately know what their personal sound is. To be patient, and it's a process to discover that. But that process is the best part.
Yeah, and it's different for everyone. So just, again, be patient with yourself. I'm Ernest.
And I'm Greg. Thanks for joining us for this masterclass brought to you by the Twin Cities Jazz Festival.